Welcome back everyone, Oz here, and today I've got some r/PettyRevenge for you all. As per usual, I'll be reading you the post, giving you my opinions, and I hope you do the same down in the comments below. And without further ado, let's jump right into it. Amstroid. My mother kept donating me junk, so I hid 200 ducks in her house. I'm not sure if this is a petty revenge or even a revenge due to the outcome, but it started as a way to have some petty revenge to my mother. My mother is notorious for giving me junk. A few examples from last month. Address stamps with my information on them from when I lived at home 15 years ago. A dentist appointment card with appointments from 2006. About 30 keys, just 30 random keys, without knowing where they fit on. USB sticks and memory cards ranging from a few megabytes to max 2 gigabytes. I love my mother, and I know she doesn't mean this in a bad way, but I have told her to stop it so many times to no avail. When my father was alive, it wasn't as bad, but now I really have to be careful when I or my wife go over, or we get another box of junk to take home. She's still cleaning up the house since the death, so I understand where it all comes. But some things are clearly meant for the bin instead of donating it to me. But last month, I had really had enough and bought 200 plastic ducks online. When she was on holiday recently, I planned to take my revenge and hid them all over her house. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, when I saw the title, the 200 Ducks Park, there was a part of me that genuinely thought this dude was just going to the local park, snatching up ducks, and managed to get 200 of them, and just hid them in his mother's house. And, you know, at first it was gonna be like, oh, you know, surprise, 200 ducks, and then now it's just hidden duck corpses around the house. I thought it was gonna go that direction for some reason. Granted, I'm pretty sleep deprived right now, so you know. And by everywhere, I really mean everywhere. Some are very visible, like in the middle of the hall or in her washing machine or on the photo frames, but most are really hidden in places where she won't look directly, like in sculptures, between the roots of her plants, between 2 coffee cups, in the pockets of her clean trousers, between her clean folded sheets, on top of the shower head, basically in every nook and cranny of the house I could find. They are always hidden at the right height because she regularly babysits our toddler and I don't want him to be able to swallow them. You would think that 200 ducks is a lot, but I recently ordered a new bag because there are so many places I can still hide some. The revenge part has failed a bit because she loves it. Every time she finds one, she's laughing and we get a photo of the found duck. And the giving junk thing has been going on ever since I've left my parents' house, so around 15 years. Long before the death of my dad last year. And yes, I have tried everything, from refusing it to accepting and throwing away in her bin. It just doesn't click for her, that if she finds something, it doesn't mean I can use it. She had told me a few times that it is junk that she's giving me. The current situation is that if I don't accept it, she stores it for later, read next visit, or she takes it with her when she comes over for a visit. Edit 2. So many people add stuff to my story and think my mother is senile, a hoarder, or has problems throwing things away. But it's not like that at all, and I don't want people to think that of my mom, lol. She is way too kind for that. My mother is a healthy 64 years young, independent woman capable of throwing away stuff. She's cleaned up a lot of stuff my dad collected over the years, like books, magazines, clothes, and everything that my dad bought double, which we only found out after his passing. Everything without real sentimental value or 0% usefulness has been thrown in the bin by her. The problem is with the stuff that's like between 5 and 1% usefulness. Like a commenter said, not the sentimental stuff. We went through that last year after my dad died, but things that are virtually useless and in most cases are. Things like appointment cards from 2006, 30 random keys, vacuum bags. Wow, she knows we have a Dyson because she bought one herself because she likes our Dyson so much. Dried out paint bins. Those plastic pots you get when you buy new plants. To name a few others. Things most people know are junk, but she somehow thinks are useful for me. She even said sometimes that it's junk but might be useful for me. Stuff that, when I point out, she knows is stupid to give me, like that appointment card from 2006. And yes, we are helping with clearing the house, whenever we can and she wants our help. Obviously, but this is the Petty Revenge subreddit, not the "look at me helping my mom" subreddit. So I like to keep the story relevant to the revenge part. Honestly, I really do like the fact that it had kind of a wholesome ending part of it, that your mom's really enjoying finding the ducks, because that's really cute. And I'm happy that you weren't just hiding dead ducks in her house. Can you imagine finding that and having to explain it like, surprise, it's a mallard. There's 200 more. Good luck. I'm actually really happy that you had fun hiding them, looking to do it more, and she's enjoying finding them. That's really sweet. And I'm also happy for the clarification that your mother isn't just an insane hoarder that's randomly dropping 30 keys on your lap and go find a use for these. And of course, I'm also happy to learn that your local duck population hasn't had a sudden random decrease. King of Zedom. You want to try to take 9 inches of our property? Well, we'll take 20 of yours. We've lived in our house for about 8 years in a rural neighborhood in Arizona. About a year ago, this dude from California bought the lot next to us and threw a fit about the stuff we had on the property line. We had put a single fence pole vaguely where the property line was. We hadn't had any sort of land survey done. It was supposed to just be a temporary marker that became a permanent marker. Dude was absolutely livid. We had vehicles parked on his property. The very tip of one of our cars was touching the established boundary. He threatened to have our vehicle towed, so we simply had an actual land survey done, and it turned out the property line was a good 20 inches into his property. Homeboy should have just, let sleeping dogs lie and not been an asshole about a few inches. Edit, I had some journalists reach out to me and ask for some more comments, so here are the updates you asked for. Feel free to ask more questions for more clarifications, or ask again if I missed yours. Hello, thank you for reaching out. The zip code is redacted for GPS reference. It's a small rural neighborhood in the mountains of Arizona. All the houses are 3 to 5 acre horse properties. The roads are all dirt and unmaintained. It used to be a very understandable place to live, but in the last few years it's been very developed and property values have been going up, quadrupling since we moved here in 2016. This has attracted a crowd of people who care what yards look like who simply weren't here when this was cheap. The neighbor is one of these new people. We moved here specifically because the neighborhood had a bunch of messy yards already and we wanted to also have lenient neighbors. We lived in harmony with our neighbor's junky yards for years. The neighbor introduced himself by calling the county on a bunch of us anonymously. We knew he called on us because he was bragging about calling the county on several other of the neighbors for their messy yards. So, whether he intentionally included us in the report or not, he brought the inspectors to the neighborhood. He came onto our property by at least 40 inches before there was a fence to closely examine our piles of scrap metal. We caught this on camera and confronted him in text. It turned out he was very angry that he had purchased land next to a pseudo scrapyard. We had several cars in various stages of disassembly and piles of materials. Keep in mind, this is the country. This is normal out here. We're on 5-acre lots. Another detail that I missed in my original post, he isn't even living on this lot. He bought a lot with a very small cabin 3 houses down along the lot next to us with the intention of turning it into an income property. After we confronted him in text, he confronted us in person in our front yard, leaning against our no trespassing sign and screaming obscenities at us. 3. We haven't seen him. Since we saw him on our security camera observing the survey markers, dismayed, it's entirely possible that we entirely chased him out of the neighborhood. The people on the other side of his lot who have an equally trashed yard from their small-scale pig farming operation that he should have known existed before buying the land had such a bad experience with him that she had a restraining order on him. They're also having a potentially equally funny dispute about a shed that she built fully on his lot over 15 years ago, which means they're going to have to go to court over who now owns it, and our adverse possession laws are certainly on her side. Currently, we're building an ugly fence on the newly surveyed property line. Honestly, I wonder if the guy just saw the property photos on Zillow and then purchased it and then drove out to check on it and then had massive buyer's remorse, but then thought, ooh, I can just report them to the county and that'll work. And then in the process of trying to cause a fuss, realized pretty quickly that, kind of got more than he bargained for by losing around 11 inches worth of property line because he decided he had to just be a dick about it. So, look, my grandmother lives in a city with 15 people. Whether you want to call it a town or a hamlet or whatever, doesn't matter. People who live in communities that small, there's a reason for it. My grandmother is actually f***ing crazy and talks in third person. I have no idea how this crazy lady is still living because her dialysis machine gave out before she did. How? I don't f***ing know. She is literally too stubborn to die. Her and I have a bit of a rocky relationship, but people who actively seek out property to be alone and isolated from other people and live near like-minded individuals? Extra radishes. Try to force me to take in my deadbeat brother? Enjoy wasting your 3-day weekend. My older brother, Ted, 42 male, has been living with my parents for the last 6 years or so. Refuses to get a full-time job. Refuses to help around the house. Drunk half the time. Known to sell a little weed and Xanax out of his bedroom window. Super disrespectful to my mom and blames her for everything. He has at least 2 kids by 2 different women he hasn't seen in years. Last year, I bought my first house, and since day 1, my parents and brother have been harassing me to let him move in with me. They say I have so much space and that they've already done enough for Ted, and it was my turn now. Basically, a constant nagging since 2023. This weekend, I finally got sick of it and decided to send a message. I got a call last Tuesday with my parents demanding once again that I'd taken my brother and that my dad had a 3-day weekend coming up, so he had time to help him move. I said, okay, fine, I'll do it, and I gave them a list on conditions that Ted would have to follow to live here. Of course, they promised he'd do everything I said, bull. And we scheduled it for Friday. So Friday comes and they show up with 2 cars full of stuff, but guess what? I wasn't home. I take their call while I'm having a beer a few blocks away. I tell them I got cold feet. Oh my, I'm so sorry, but I changed my mind and decided I couldn't go through with it. They huff and puff, but after a couple of hours of ignored calls, they go home. I call them Saturday to apologize for being such a coward. And after dwelling on it, I've decided they were right, and I'll let them move in. And as a token of my remorse, I even bought a mattress and a nice heavy bed frame as a moving-in gift. I just took a picture of a random expensive mattress and bed frame at a local furniture store. My parents were instantly smitten with the photos. Oh, you guys like cherry wood? And I suggested that maybe Ted didn't deserve such a nice gift, and it'd be better if Ted took their older, worn-out bed frame and mattress and I send them home with the new stuff. Of course they took that offer. So on Sunday, they show up again with not only all of Ted's stuff, but also a large wooden bed frame with built-in drawers and a high backboard. And guess what? When they show up, I'm not home again. I ignore their calls for a good hour and finally tell them that I decided to change my mind again and hung up. They went ballistic, but ultimately left again. We talked yesterday morning and I told my dad that I was sorry and I was wrong and he can move in. My dad freaked out and told me how in the hell he can ever believe that lie again, and I basically told him he can't, so they should stop bringing it up. Edit, not going to bother replying to the people who say things like, why didn't you just say no, or this could have been solved with a mature conversation. What part of harassing me for over a year did y'all not understand? How many times do I gotta say no? 30 times? 40 times? 50 times? No doesn't work. And trying the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result, is just insanity. Honestly, it sounds like they're pretty f***ing sick of Ted too, and they just want to pot him off onto you. Good for you for actually putting your foot down, and after a year of saying no and them not listening, I'm sure they'll finally get the message this time. See, in a situation like this, I'd be worried that I'd cave, because honestly, the familial pressure might actually get to me, and that kind of stresses me the hell out. Thankfully, I don't have a Ted in my life. It is pretty gross and telling that the moment you actually get a place of your own that they immediately try dropping Ted at your doorstep like he's some kind of basket full of rabid kittens or something. Dude, I don't want a Ted in my house. The Toilet Destroyer. Slumlord's neighbor's time to pay what he owes. The house directly next door to me is a rental property which I had some issues with earlier this year. The issues came from 2 massive spruce trees that were growing on the property line and were causing property damage to my property. In my area, it is a law that in the case of trees growing on the property line, the costs of removal must be split evenly between neighbors, and because the trees and roots were causing property damage, there was a significant case to be made for their removal. Removing the trees was not cheap and involved bringing in cranes and multiple days of work due to their size and proximity to structures. I approached the neighboring property owner about splitting the removal costs and was basically told, "I have no money." His portion would have been about $4,000. At that point, we decided it would be more expensive to hire an arbor attorney and drag this through the courts and then try to collect that money than it is to just pay for the entire job ourselves. Now, here is where the revenge comes in. The tenant that lives there passed away and the landlord decided to sell the house. During the inspection process, they discovered some trees on their property that were hazardous and needed to be removed before the sale could go through. It was uninsurable unless the hazard was mitigated. In order to get to these trees, equipment would have to go through my property. The lots are small, and the way this lot is situated, he would either have to demolish his other neighbor's garage or use my property. The owner approached me asking for permission, and my response was that I would only grant permission to use my property for $4,000, the exact cost of what he owed me. He tried claiming that it would jeopardize the sale of his property, and I simply replied, "I don't care. This is the cost to use my property, take it or leave it." The following week, he came with a check for $4,000, and I granted written permission to use my property. Honestly, he has no room to complain concerning the fact that you saved him from having to deal with, hiring a lawyer and dealing with, battling things out in the legal system when the law is clearly on your side. That shit gets expensive really quick, and if he really didn't have the money to handle it and you were offering to handle it yourself, then he suddenly needed something to happen and he was looking to sell the property. I think he could probably afford the $4,000 that it would cost to access your property. It's not your fault it costs $4,000 to access your property, that's just the rule of the land. Much like how it's the rule of the land that the cost to remove a tree should be split down the middle. You should feel honestly pretty lucky that you didn't hit him with the extra grand for the inconvenience tax or for the delayed payment tax, because you could have easily done so. But instead you were honestly pretty fair about it. And that's even with inflation rates. Actually, you may have been a bit too fair about it. Nearsighted Naida. Refused to wait on us until after the deal expires. This is what happens. This is a story from my dad as I was very young when this happened. Once upon a time, many years ago, there was a Friendly's where we would frequently get breakfast, and back in the day, there was a deal available. You could get 2 pancakes, 2 sausages, or 2 strips of bacon and 2 eggs for $2.22, so long as you were there before 11 a.m. Shame on them for not making it 12:22 p.m. So we go with a large party to Friendly's and arrive at the empty restaurant before 11 a.m. And then we wait, and wait, and wait some more. We're not waited on until after 11, and so the staff refuses to give us the deal. We end up ordering the same things we'd get with the 222 deal. But because we weren't waited on until after the deal had expired, it cost much more. With a group of our size, we ended up with a sizable bill. I'm not sure the exact amount, but it was over $100. Now, my dad was a waiter. He understands well the importance of tips and almost always tips generously, but not on this day. Oh no. On the day of the incident, you know what tip my dad left? $2.22. I do kind of feel bad for the waitstaff because there's a pretty good chance they were just following management's orders and were on direct orders from management not to serve the table until after 11 due to budgetary constraints. Like, I 100% understand the revenge, but it definitely wasn't the waitstaff's fault, and honestly, I kind of feel bad for them for having to wait such a large table and then getting hit with $2.22 as the tip. I would be honestly f***ing crushed. Not saying your dad's a bad person, because that 100% falls back on management, but at the same time, there's the person who got f***ed over was the waiter. Because they were definitely on orders from management to wait until after the deal had expired. Hell, my managers made me do this because we used to have Philly 4 Thursdays where if you ordered a Philly before 4 on a Thursday, you would get it for $4 instead of $5. And, we had a large party come in at 3:55 and management made me not take the order until 4. So they just kind of waited by the cash register. Then at 4:01, I came out with, "Oh, sorry guys, had to go do with some ice cream stuff, yada yada. Oh, it's after 4. Can't give you the Philly 4 Thursday deal." Yeah. I thought I was gonna get shot that day. I'm gonna be 100% honest. Sergeant Silly Bollocks refused to stop at a security check. I run security on an industrial site, which means I do occasional night shifts. The site stays open until 11 p.m., as it has a number of businesses that work late, including a storage facility. Due to a recent demolition on one of the units, the storage facility opening hours have been restricted. One of my jobs is to stop anyone who wishes to come in between the hours of 8 p.m. and 11 p.m. to check they have access codes. It's a 30-second check. Everyone is happy to comply apart from this one asshole who instantly took it as a personal attack. I stopped by the security barrier with a pleasant greeting. "Good evening, sir. Are you trying to access the site?" "What's it gotta do with you?" he replied. I explained if you wish to come in, I'd need to know why for security purposes. "I'm not telling you nothing. Who are you?" "What's it gotta do with you anyway?" I calmly explained that anyone accessing the site after the hours of 8 p.m. and before 11 would need a valid reason or code if they want to come in, otherwise access will be denied. "Garf, you ain't even got a badge. I'm not telling you where I'm going," he shouted. "No problem, buddy. In that case, you can't come in." As I turned my back, he drove up to the curb around the barrier and sped into the storage unit. Normally, I'd lose my shit and throw him out physically, but on this occasion, I took the revenge option. As it was closed at 11 p.m. and locking up time, I decided to manually override the gate lock on the storage facility and lock him in. Return to the front gates and lock them as well. As we are a police-patrolled site, I notified them of the situation in case the guy phoned them. It took around 40 minutes for my phone to start ringing. It's the contact number for emergencies. I knew the dickhead had realized he was locked in and I got around 15 calls. I ignored them all. Long story short, he had to wait there until 4:30 a.m. to get out after my shift. It was delightful. Opening up the gates and waving him out with a super smug grin on my face. To add insult to injury, I informed the site owners and they have served him with an eviction notice. Act like a get treated like a. So judging by the name Sergeant Silly Bollocks and the use of a very specific C word, I would guess this person's probably English or maybe even Australian. Now, why does that matter? Because I wonder if someone breaks into a building in any of these countries, what would happen if you got locked in because you broke into a facility without proper entry permission? Would you be liable for locking the person in, especially if it was on purpose, or are they the ones who are completely f***ed because they decided to disobey security procedure and just drive over the curb and essentially break into the facility? I guess I'm more curious if homeboy here could have any lasting repercussions or if he's all in the clear. Also, in a circumstance like this, how come he wouldn't just call the police and just have them, drag the guy off? I mean, I feel like more damage could have been done. Perhaps locking him in the storage unit for a couple of hours was actually an act of mercy. Hardo pirates. They don't know I'm their boss. I work at a facility with children with ASD, so due to HIPAA, this will be very vague. We are short-staffed on this particular day, and I volunteered to stay late to help with coverage so one of the children can make an important doctor's visit. Normally, I'm a supervisor of a different shift and oversee the people that I was filling in for. We're a fairly large company with awful turnaround, so people and titles get lost in the day-to-day all the time, on top of the chaos that our clients already stir up on a daily basis. So I'm with my assigned child, and this new lady comes out and immediately lays into me about how I have to do these things and those things. Starts questioning if I even know what I'm doing, all while ignoring the client she's supposed to be watching. I tried correcting her, tried to explain that what she was doing was improper and a danger to the child. In this instance, it's a child who frequently chokes on food and she's not preparing his food properly. All the guidance I was attempting to give her, despite the disrespect and talking down to me, was met with huffs and puffs and her storming off mumbling insults she thinks I don't hear. I just laugh and ensure not only my child, but hers are safe. After all, I only have to wait an hour or two before I leave. And I'm patient. And petty. This behavior continues the entire 2 hours. During this time, she leaves her child unattended a dozen times, ignores all my guidance, tries bossing me around, hurls insults, gets attacked by her child, many of our clients are violent, and I still step in and rescue her so everyone is at the bare minimum at least safe. I never once told her how long I've been there, nor what my position is. I simply thanked her for the advice and smiled. And in the spirit of patience and embracing my inner demons, I will now wait until the day she ends up walking into my office. It will be glorious. And yes, I did do my due diligence as a mandated reporter, and both children are safe, and were handed off to veteran staff who are very competent. Update: I have no confirmation of the exact discipline, but she was removed from scheduling. This could mean a multitude of things, but it for sure means they consider this a serious enough infraction to disallow her from working with the kids. We'll probably know more after the weekend. Update 2, patience is a virtue, the cake is in the oven. Honestly, I'm a bit on edge because I was really hoping for a bit extra and a satisfying ending, but we can only imagine what the ending would be when she has to walk into the office and then realize, oh shit, the person that I spent an entire shift talking down to is my boss and is probably far more qualified than I am. Or the unfortunate, far more likely option is that she'll think that, oh, I don't deserve to be fired because I know more than my boss does. After all, I had to spend an entire shift babysitting them. Unfortunately, it's probably going to be the latter, which sucks. God, I can only cross my fingers and hope it's not the case. If there is ever an update, I'll make sure it's included in the next PettyRevenge video. Have you been waiting to try gamer subs, but the shipping cost is just a bit too high because you're not in America? Well, I got good news for you. For a limited time, for like a week, shipping is free if you use code EYES. The 10% discount has been replaced with free shipping. So if the usual spiel of gamer subs caught your attention, but the shipping costs were a bit high, now's your chance. So strap in and strap on and use code EYES at checkout for some free shipping between the days and... Did I really just say that? It's September 6th to September 13th. Hope y'all enjoy free shipping. Code EYES.